Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. In today's video I'm going to be repotting 4 orchids. These are quite different to many orchids you may have repotted yourselves in the past, on the grounds they have incredibly fine roots, like hair type roots, so they are quite different to many orchids that we've dealt with. I'm doing all 4 because they are all the same type of orchid and they're all going to go in the same media. Some may even go back in the pots they came out of. They're not getting repotted because they've outgrown their pots, they're getting repotted because the media they are in is going off. So we're in the kitchen, so we can endearingly call this kitchen time. I know some people really miss that from old days. But basically I will have to take the camera off of the tall tripod and put it on my little mini table tripod so that we can get in nice and close and see what I'm up to. So let's get going. Okay, these orchids are Restrepias. I've got 2 small ones here that came from Hannah when she was very ill and had to go into hospital and everything. She couldn't look after her orchids, and unfortunately they were virtually dead by the time they got to me. I've managed to get them to grow. These have never bloomed. They've been in their pots quite a long time now, so I'm going to basically say that media is going off. Refreshing the media should get these into much better growth, although they are actually growing and they have put on some roots. So there's those 2 to do. And then this one was the first ever Restrepia I got from Burnham's. It's not growing at all well at the moment, and the reason is the media has gone. So that one is, it says it's Restrepia Falkenbergii, but I'm relatively well informed that it's not, because it's not tall enough. And the 2 types of blooms on these 2 plants are virtually identical. They're almost impossible to tell apart, but the plants are, because Falkenbergii is quite a tall upright plant, and the one that I believe this is, which is Brachypus I think it is not. So that chances are that's mislabeled. That's that one. And then this one came from the Eric Young Foundation originally. I got it from Peter White. Virtually everything that comes out of the Eric Young Foundation has a French twang to the name, and this is Haulisse, and basically because it's an island off the coast of France, even though it's associated with the UK. It's not really part of the UK. Anyway, so those are the 4, and we'll start off with this one. Now, why am I repotting these? They've only been in their pots a couple of years, but they go back to the time when I got some Welsh moss, and it seemed very good at the time. It seemed to be doing very good for mounted orchids until we came to the winter and it died, because obviously a lot of the mounted orchids were drier in winter. The moss died and it really started messing the roots up at that point. It's done the same in the pots, so we need to get it out. As I've got 4 to do, we really don't need to mess the the labels up. Now, these are very easy to repot on the grounds that they have such fine root systems. As you can now see, the roots are quite hair-like. Now, I want to get all of this old moss out as best I can. If there is a little bit left in there, it won't be the end of the world. But cleaning these off is a very easy process. Restrepias repot incredibly easily. So there you go, that's one done. That's ready to repot now. If you break a few roots, it doesn't matter. It's a branching fine root system. It will grow new roots very readily once it gets in a media it likes. So that's one. The next one is also a big one. This is in the same sort of media. This is the so-called Falkenbergii, although I'm confident it isn't. And it would be a shame to lose this. I've had this one a very long time. It was a tiny little plant when I got it, about 6 leaves. And it's grown on a lot since then. But this root system, you can see the roots are just falling off. It's dying. So this plant's not at all happy. Root system's died. So I'm hoping that it will start some new roots from the base of the plant when it gets in some new media. That's a failure. That did not work at all well. As I said, there's a distinct musty, Fausty smell now, having taken that one out of its pot. So that media was gone. Right, and then they've got the 2 little ones. And this is Ephipium with capital A in quotes. So that's been registered as an exception to the normal species. Now this root system is not dead. You can see as I play with it like that, the roots just unfurl. That's a good little root system. Very good root system for the size of the plant. Give that some more suitable media without the dead moss in it, and that will get going really quickly. So that's a nice little one. And the last one, the 4th one. So I'm keeping these with their labels because like those 2 are so similar, they would be very easy to muddle up. And again, nice little active root system. See, now this one's got slightly thicker roots in places, yeah, but that's unusual. Most Restrepias have very fine root systems. They're like hair. That's a nice little root system. So the 2 small ones should set off quite quickly now. Get them in some more suitable media, and we'll get them going. Right, Restrepias, cool growers, shade lovers, although in the UK I wouldn't go too shady. They do like some light. They grow incredibly well in terrariums where they do, you know, if you get a variety that is a small version, they can do incredibly well in a terrarium because they really do like high humidity. Their ideal world is, you know, literally cool, below sort of 22, 23 degrees, and at that sort of temperature 80% plus humidity. I know somebody who grows these at in with their Draculas, and they keep those at 90-95% humidity and cool and relatively shady. So that's what they like, not too bright with the light, cool temperatures, some airflow if you can provide it. These are getting virtually no airflow at the moment, they're doing okay, and they like to stay moist. These are very fine root systems. If they go dry for anything more than the shortest possible time, they will die. And unfortunately with Restrepias, the dead ones look almost identical to the live ones. But yeah, they don't like to go totally dry. As far as I'm concerned, when I water mine, they are heading towards dryness, but they haven't yet got there. So they don't get totally dry unless it's a mistake on my part. It has happened for very short periods of time in the winter when it's very cold, and they've survived that okay. So, but I wouldn't recommend it, you know. So there we go. I shall have a tidy up, and we'll get some media out, and we'll get that mixed up, and we'll get these in their pots. As I said, I suspect they will go back in the same pots, but given the size of the root system, that pot is too big. Far too big. Far too much media. Stay wet far too long. Not capable of drying out with a small root system. So we won't be reusing that one. So anyway, as I say, I'll have a tidy up, clean my tray off, and get some media out here, and we'll get some clean pots suitable for the size of the plants, and we'll get these full potted up. I'll be back. Okay, welcome back. I've had a clear up. The media I'm going to use, this is small bark mixed with perlite, and I'm going to add in some of the New Zealand sphagnum moss. This comes as a dry block basically, and as far as repotting is concerned, this is the only time you will ever see me use any media that's wet. And basically, if this isn't wet and you try and break it up into smaller pieces, you'll get a lot of dust. Whereas if it's wet, that don't happen. So basically what you can do is, I don't want the water, I just need this wet to enable me to break it up. So I can squeeze the water out and then just break it into smaller pieces. The reason I want smaller pieces is to evenly distribute this moss through the media in the pot. No lumps, no long strandy bits crossing over with other strandy bits forming a wet spot basically. So by making sure it's broken up into small pieces, it will spread itself out nice and evenly around the pot. Now when you're using a media like this and you're adding sphagnum moss, the amount of sphagnum moss you add determines how long that media is going to stay wet after you water it. It has a major impact on how often you will need to water. Bear that in mind. Those of you with busy lives and, oh, I can only water on Sunday on my day off, well, you might need a media that stays moist a bit longer. We'll add more moss. Some people might live in a country where the temperatures are much higher and stuff dries out so fast they plant in moss without any of the additives, just in moss. Obviously that will hold the maximum amount of water possible for the, given these choices down here anyway. And some things do grow incredibly well in sphagnum moss. It replicates to a degree how they would grow in the wild. A lot of things like Draculas and Masdevallias, they're growing in the moss. Although it looks like they're growing on a tree, they're not really, they're growing in the moss. The tree is only there really to stop everything falling about. Draculas are often found when you get those really damp montane forest type places where lots of mist and fog and that, rains a lot of the moss hangs down from the branches, and a lot of the Draculas grow in that moss. They're not even on the branch, they're hanging underneath the branch in the moss. So it can vary quite a bit. Because of my lower temperatures, especially in the winter, I don't want things capable of staying wet too long. Now with these, it probably wouldn't matter so much, but these are watered in a cycle with other plants. And I don't want to pot something up in such a way that it ends up becoming a separate watering run because of the length of time it takes to dry off a bit. Right, how are we doing here? So this is to enable the media to stay moist longer than it would do if it wasn't there, and the amount will determine how moist it will stay for how long. Now that's not a lot of moss, and I will put some more in. It's a look. I can't look up and say, well, you need 3 parts of this and 1 part of that. I don't work like that. I just go by the look and the feel of the media based on what I've used before and what worked okay. Yeah, and this mix, the small bark, the perlite and the sphagnum moss, seems very good at generating root systems. Now these little plants, apart from one, don't really need any help generating root systems, but the moss should help. Yep, that's about right. Right, so I'm just going to dry my hands off, sort these pots out, I'll be back. Okay, one at a time then. I popped them in their black pots so that they could stay with their label. Now these small ones, they came out of these pots, they're going straight back in. There's nothing wrong with the size of the pot relative to the size of the plant. Now, no crocking, not for these, mainly because I'm going to plant them low. I'll show you what I mean. So we'll get some in there so that we can get the roots to sit nicely, and then we'll stick some down that side. And then we'll push the plant over and stick some down the other side. And then we'll push it over there and stick some down that side. And then we'll push it over there and stick some down that side. So we've now gone down all four sides. It's nice and even, and gently press. I'm not going mad. And that's quite low in the pot. That's what I was getting at. The fact that I knew I was going to go quite low in the pot, yeah, there's no need for crocking. The roots will fill that pot very quickly. So back in the black pot, label in, one done. Next, and that's also, this is the one with the slightly thicker roots. It's not the largest plant. It's one of the smallest plants, but it has got thicker roots, so they do vary. And it's also a very good root system for the size of the plant. Very good. So again, down one side, 180 degrees, down the other side. That's now holding it in place. 90 degrees. 180 degrees. You can almost guarantee now that the plant is in the middle of the pot. Gently press. You can press a little bit harder if the media is dry. If it was wet, you'd be compacting it quite badly, but not so much so when it's dry. So again, back in the black pot, label in. That's the two small ones done. And we'll do this one. I ought to tidy these up at the repotting time. By tidying them up, what I mean is this. Old leaf spikes, all these little wispy bits here are old flower spikes. The blooms come out from the underside of the leaf, and each leaf can bloom many times on most Restrepias. So these are all old flower spikes. So that leaf, under that leaf, has bloomed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 times. And just snipping those off makes the plant look a hell of a lot tidier. Now this is the one that had the dead roots. So this one's going in a much smaller pot than it was in before. And I will put some, I know it doesn't seem like it, but that is crocking on the grounds there isn't any moss in that. I've deliberately picked up some that didn't have moss in it. Then we'll put some with moss over the top of it, and then this is going to go very low in the pot. Reason? Have a think. The lower in the pot it is, the less media there is. Is it a good root system? No. So it's not going to grow into that media very quickly, is it? So by having a pot full with the plant right at the top, half the pot would stay wet because there wouldn't be any roots in it. Yeah, so we pot low. Push the plant right down in the pot. That will also help the leaves stand up. Now there's a lot less media in that pot than there would be if I brought the plant up near the rim of the pot. A lot of airspace in here, so the plant is quite deep, which means there's less media, which means it won't stay wet so long. So another one done. Actually that black pot's too big. I did bring a smaller one in, I just forgot. Oops! Oh, now I've got to bend down. Oh! Ah! For those of you who thought my back was completely better, no it's not. But it's good enough to get myself dressed and get on with some work. So that's the state of play. It's not better at all, but it's a lot better than it was. I can actually get in and out of a chair without wincing. But it's not right, it's not right yet, but it's getting there. See, again, all these tatty little bits, if they were trimmed off, that would look much nicer. But not now, maybe another time. Don't forget, it's a good method to get into. Down one side, 180 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and that's all four sides, and the plant will be in the middle of the pot as a consequence. Gently press down, not go mad, and again, that's relatively near the top of the pot. There is a nice gap there, but that was a better root system. So black pot, tag that doesn't want to be picked up, even though that tag's wrong, and that's it, all four done. So get them in their pots doesn't take long. So we got the two larger ones, and then the two little small ones that came from Hannah that have yet to bloom. All the larger ones have bloomed. They bloom on and off. So there we go. Now this is leftovers. What do we do with that? We put it in a bag, which is where it came out of, because it started off as leftovers. And I added some to it. And obviously added far too much. But there's enough here. Whoops, dead leaf, we don't want that in there. There's enough here to carry on repotting for another couple of sessions without mixing any more up. Now I know that's got some damp moss in it, but the actual media is bone dry, dust dry. So it will take the moisture out of that moss, leaving it virtually dry, so it won't go mouldy or go off or anything like that. And it lives in this tray. I keep all my media in this tray. This tray lives directly in front of the radiator in the lounge. It's constantly warm, so it doesn't stay wet for long. So there we go, we don't waste media. So four repots done in one session, because they were all the same sort of plant, they all had similar root systems, and they were all going to go in the same media. It doesn't always happen like that, but this time, so you know, pretty good stuff. As far as my back is concerned, the cream that I got is working, such that, because it's difficult to use on your back, because there's these things called clothes, and clothes soak stuff up because they're made of cloth. So when I actually put it on my back, I can't have any clothes or my dressing gown on for some time until it's completely soaked in. So I didn't put any on at bedtime. I only put it on yesterday morning, about 8 o'clock. So I only had one lot yesterday, and I got out of bed this morning and I thought, hello, we're well on the mend. So again, I put some on this morning, and that's what I will probably do for the next few days. But certainly today is a major improvement. It's not right. I'm still not repotting things like bonsai because there's weight involved, lifting up the pots. They've been out in the rain. They're heavy. So I'm not going mad. I'm not doing anything that involves lifting anything heavy or anything more than gentle activity. The only major big deal was getting the media out of this tray on the floor, which meant crouching down, and putting it back will be the same thing. But I can do that crouching, and the dining room table's right next to the place. I can put my hand on there and pull myself up. So effortless. And that's what's got to be done for a few days yet, until I'm absolutely confident we've gone past the worst. Here's a theory for you. We could have had a little bout of what's it called, sciatica. It's basically a nerve issue, although reading up on that, if you get that, you often get numbness and everything going down your legs and things like that. I haven't had any of that, it's only been in the back. But it seems strange that as soon as I applied an anti-inflammatory painkiller at source that soaks right into muscles and things like that, everything started getting better rapidly, which makes you think that there could have been something a bit trapped or a bit pinched, and obviously your muscles grab hold of anything that's wrong and tighten up to stop you doing any more damage. Well, by applying an anti-inflammatory, they relax, release the pressure. Thought. No, I'm not going to the doctor to find out. That means getting in the car. Anyway, quick repotting, and see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. Oh, just a word on the end, the bit on the end. We haven't done one of those for a while. If you quite like Restrepias, Burnham's have probably got the largest variety for sale. They do have an awful lot of species and hybrids too. So there is a very good selection there if you wanted to start growing some Restrepias. Now I've got something that I've got to try that I was shown by Helen Milner. You can Google Helen Milner and find out about her. Very big noise in the orchid world basically, and very scientifically minded. She's found something on Restrepia blooms that's brand new to science. She showed it to me at the Bournemouth Orchid Society show. She said, I was talking to her about the 3 antennae and her discovery with the electron microscope and that, and she said, oh, have you seen the lights? You know, with sciencey people, sometimes you just sort of smile and nod, don't you? I said, no, what do you mean? She said, hang on, I'll see if I can show you. She found a Restrepia and put it at reasonable angle for what she wanted to do. She said, now stand in front of the bloom and look at it and I'll show you. She got her phone out and turned the torch on and moved her phone up and down, and 2 little lights came on in the centre of the bloom as though they were tiny little torch bulbs. Yeah? And she said, now move your head sort of downwards, and the lights went out. Move your head back up, there they are again. Move your head up higher and they disappear. They're landing lights. They work like the lights on an aircraft carrier. And it's for the insects coming in. If they can see the lights, they know they're approaching at the right angle. What about that then? I will try and film that for you, but boy is that going to be difficult. And I don't know whether it's only species, whether it's a certain species. I don't know enough about it. But one day I will try and film that for you. But I've seen it. It exists. I wasn't dreaming and I hadn't been on the whiskey. So another fascinating little thing about Restrepia blooms. The more you look into these little blooms, the more fascinating they are, quite honestly. But I will try and film that one day, the landing lights on Restrepia blooms, along with the 3 antennae, yeah, that are guiding, you know, plus the stripes. Everything on that bloom is geared up to getting the right insect in the right place at the right time. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.